Hello, and thank you for joining CMB Regional Center's exclusive webinar. We'll be allowing just another moment or two for our attendees to settle in who are just joining us. Thank you again. Hello to all of our attendees. I'm Andrew Radosevich, Global Market Specialist for CMB Regional Centers. I'm happy to be your host for today's event. On behalf of CMB Regional Centers, a warm welcome to all of you that were able to join us, and it's truly our pleasure to have you here today. We're delighted to present to you another event in our Coming to America series, your EB-5 action plan, the big move, and what immigrants need to know about planning a move to the United States. We hope you find tremendous value in our discussion and presentations today. The information shared today is for educational purposes and is not meant to be taken as legal or directed advice. Today, we're happy to have our distinguished guests lead our main topic of conversation. Ms. DIanne Stewart, President of PathwayUSA. DIanne is an expert in international relocation and is also the focus of her company, PathwayUSA. She and her husband, Bruce, have been able to assist over 1,500 families successfully transition their lives to another country and has been doing so since 2006. DIanne is an immigrant herself also. We're also joined today by Mr. Kai Boyle, Vice President with CMB Regional Centers. Mr. Boyle has over 30 years of business leadership and management experience. Mr. Boyle has been involved in the EB-5 industry since 2010, is a frequent speaker in EB-5 events. Kai has also been active in economic development throughout the past 3 decades. So today for our agenda, we'll start out with Kai speaking briefly about CMB Regional Centers and our current projects. And then DIanne will be discussing how she and Pathway assist their clients in transitioning their lives to America. She'll also be covering how immigrants can prepare for their big move to the United States. Following DIanne's presentation, we'll look forward to an interactive Q&A session. And some of you have already sent in questions ahead of our event today. Thank you for those. If those questions apply to our topics today, we'll start with those questions first. And then in the Q&A command control down at the bottom of your screens, please use that to ask questions as we are going through today's event. We'll do our best to address all those questions as time allows. And just as a note for housekeeping, all of your microphones will be muted and all of your cameras will be off today. So without further ado, Mr. Kai Boyle.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's certainly a delight to be here today. And DIanne, welcome to the next in the series of Coming to America, what immigrants need to know as they arrive here to the United States, or actually before they arrive here today. Thank you for being part of the event today.
Good morning, Kai. It's wonderful to be here. Coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I hear that you guys have just had a major snowfall in your area. So we don't have any snow here, but I'm glad that you made it to the office for our webinar.
And you know, that's one of the interesting things about the United States, where we really have a huge footprint. And for those that want to live in snow and like wintertime, you can enjoy that. You can live anywhere in the United States that you'd like. If you like winter or you like sunshine, beaches, or Charlotte, North Carolina, where the climate is moderate. So that's one of the advantages to coming to the United States, is the fact that geographically it's so diverse. So it's really incredible in that regard. We've got a lot to do today, and it's busy. As one might know, when the topic of today's discussion is actually the big move. And the big move means work. And so DIanne's going to talk about how to prepare for the big move to the United States, and some of those important things that you should think about. And we will get started with DIanne's portion in a moment. But for those of you that are joining us from all around the world, and we have quite a large number, we encourage you to ask questions and ensure that we'll spend as much time as necessary to get to whatever questions you might have. We're always anxious to see what questions there are, and from our participants and those of you who have been attending this series of events, you know that we welcome those questions, and we'll spend plenty of time to answer your question when you're here today during this portion of the webinar. So we welcome those, and be sure to send them along. Use the Q&A button down below to share your question, and we'll work like the devil to get it done. But speaking of work, when you move a home from one location to another just across the street, it's a lot of work. So DIanne's going to lead us through what it will take and what you should think about when it comes to moving a home across the world, from wherever you are around the globe to the United States, and making that big move. There's a lot of things to consider. DIanne's an expert in that, and provides concierge service. And there will be some information that I think each and every one of you will enjoy hearing today. We've also got some of the family members who may have been invited, or some of you that have joined our webinar that aren't really familiar with the EB-5 program and who CMB is. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes before we get to the main topic to talk about what EB-5 is and who CMB is, and introduce the EB-5 program. That's America's Immigration Investment Program. And at its core, EB-5 is really a jobs creation program that was created in the 1990s by Congress, that allowed for immigrants to get a benefit of a green card, permanent residence, if they were to invest in the United States and to generate at least 10 qualifying jobs for American workers. Well, I'd done some research, and my research led me to, back in the 1980s, in 1988 and 1989, some language that was presented to Congress that actually became part of the legacy language for the actual EB-5 program, was proposed and sponsored by the then Senator Joe Biden. And Senator Biden actually proposed a $1 million investment, create 10 jobs immigration platform in his language that he proposed. That was back in 1988. In 1989, that language eventually would be pushed into the 1990 immigration change. So that came about, that actually fledged and launched the EB-5 program. So we're hoping to see that the new President Biden is a staunch supporter of EB-5. When you look back at what he's done in the past, he's been a staunch supporter. In fact, he proposed some of the language that is the legacy language that became part of the EB-5 program itself. So that lends itself to some high hopes and aspirations for those of us in the EB-5 program. Well, the program itself was established by the Immigration Act of 1990. That legacy language in 1988 and 89 that now President Biden proposed was morphed into that Immigration Act of 1990. Back then it was the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, that monitored the program and moderated the program. Now it's the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. And the idea is the foreign investment would spur job creation in the United States and stimulate the economy in areas that have high unemployment or areas that need job creation. And if they were to invest in those job-creating locations, it would reduce the investment amount from the then original $1 million to a $500,000 investment. Well, in November of 2019, they changed the investment amount. The regulations changed from a minimum of $1 million to a higher amount of $1.8 million. The lower investment amount is still half of the higher investment amount, but it's presently at $900,000. And still, the EB-5 investment and the investor must create at least 10 jobs to qualify for the immigration benefit. Now, the category itself allows for 10,000 visas to be distributed annually every fiscal year to the participants in the EB-5 program. And to give you a tally of what 10,000 visas means, it's not 10,000 different applications. It's 10,000 visas, and every person that is part of an application must have their own visa. So for example, in a family of 4 where there's mother and father and 2 children, each one of those individuals would need their own visa. So in that example, that would be 4 visas for that family, and that would come out of that pool of 10,000. Well, the category of 10,000, those 10,000 visas have been subscribed and spoken for since 2014. And the category prior to that did not use all of its visas, but it looks as though for the foreseeable future, those 10,000 visas in the EB-5 category will be spoken for. And so there, in some areas of the world, you have a wait, and because there's a backlog of oversubscription for some of the countries around the world. We're working devilishly to get that changed through Congress, and hopefully again with President Biden and his support of EB-5, we can add some visas to the category and make it available for more participants and more jobs to be created in the United States, especially in a post-COVID environment and a post-COVID economy. We're going to need those jobs to be created not only in the United States, but around the world. But this program could certainly help the United States create more jobs. The EB-5 timeline is simple one. It requires a few steps. The first step is to file a petition known as the I-526 petition, and that one is filed again with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, the USCIS. Then the USCIS receives that petition, and then they process it to validate whether or not the filer of the petition qualifies for the process to move through the program of EB-5. March 31st, they changed how they are adjudicating those petitions is based on visa availability. And for countries that have not maxed out their annual allocation, those petitions are to be adjudicated first, and because there would be a visa that's available. The processing times vary for the applications, but the USCIS posts on their website at the uscis.gov, you can see the estimated processing times, the range of estimated processing times that are posted on the website, and those are the ones that you would want to rely upon. The next step after the I-526 petition has been processed and approved is to be invited to a consulate interview after all of your documents are ready and prepared. And then after that consulate interview, after you pass the interview with the consulate, they put the visa inside your passport, and you have 6 months to use that visa to enter the United States. And that entering the United States begins a required 2 years of conditional residency. That conditional residency is exactly 2 years. However, 90 days before the conclusion of that 2-year period, you file the second petition in the process, and that's known as the I-829 petition. That petition demonstrates to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services that you have indeed invested the right amount. You've left that money in the investment for the right amount of time through your conditional residency period. And importantly, you've created the 10 required jobs. If those criteria have been met, then they will remove any conditions on your green card and make it permanent. And in this case, permanent is permanent. Don't have to reapply, don't have to requalify. As long as you maintain your green card and the status, then the only thing that will need to be done is to have a new photograph every 10 years to change the photograph, but you never have to renew that visa. The time spent in the process from entering the United States all the way through to the the issuance of your permanent residence card, once that's issued, that qualifies as time that is accrued towards the possibility of applying for a visa citizenship. And although some families don't apply for citizenship right away, some delay it, some don't, say just remain permanent residents. Others are very eager to become, get a passport for the United States and to enjoy citizenship of the United States. So it depends upon the family. It's an option. It's not a requirement. So that's the EB-5 program in a nutshell, and also the step-by-step process from the beginning of filing the I-526 petition to receiving what is known as the permanent green card at the I-829 stage after the 2 years of conditional residency. So now what I'd like to do is introduce CMB and who we are and what's, that's the program, but CMB, we're what's known as a regional center, and we're authorized by the USCIS to offer individuals from around the globe the opportunity to come to the United States through the EB-5 program. And how we do that is we offer opportunities and offerings for participants to invest the requisite amount, which is $900,000 for our current projects, and then to go through the process of the EB-5 program with an investment that's pooled with other investors who also are investing in the target project. Our success throughout our history, we have more than 5,700 investors who call CMB, who trust us with their EB-5 pursuits. More than 4,900 of those investors have already achieved their first step, that I-526 petition approval, and more than 1,400 have seen an I-829 petition approval, and that's that permanent green card. The disparity in the number of investors and the number that have already seen the I-526 or I-829, some of the investors haven't made it through the process, and the USCIS hasn't processed their petition yet, so they haven't made it to those various stages. We've created more than 185,000 jobs for American workers through our EB-5 offerings and with the participation of our EB-5 investors. More than $3 billion of EB-5 capital has been raised and is at work in the United States, creating jobs and driving economic development with our various projects, our 74 fully subscribed projects. Now, CMB continues to have a 100% success rate with the adjudication of any project by the USCIS at any stage that it's been adjudicated. Our projects have been approved 100% of the time. Very few regional centers can hold a candle to the statistics and to the pedigree that CMB is garnered over the years. And that's why more than 5,700 families from around the world, from 103 different countries, trust CMB for their EB-5 pursuits. The EB-5 team is literally throughout the world. We have people that speak some 15 different languages, 50 plus staff members. We also have some dialects that from the various regions that our staff members are able to speak. And so you can see that we are able to represent our projects to families around the world, and oftentimes we can do it in their native tongue, which is also important when it comes to explaining some of the concepts and some of the important aspects of the EB-5 investment that they're about to make. But there's one thing that's universal, regardless of where you live or what the project happens to be that we're marketing at the time. For the EB-5 investor, when we strip away all of the offerings and the project itself, and we get down to the core of what's important to the participants for the EB-5 program, there are typically 3 goals, and these goals are in order. And the first goal for every EB-5 investor is to get a permanent green card for themselves and their family. That's the number 1 goal. That's the reason that the families from around the world are participating and wanting to come to the United States and using the EB-5 program to do that, is because they want permanent residence for themselves and their family members. Perhaps the reasons behind that permanent residence card or that green card is that they want to start a business in the United States. Maybe it's the children. They want to have the children get some education in the finest schools around the world. Maybe it's so that they want to retire and enjoy the leisure time, or maybe it's to reunify families. Maybe there's some families that are already here that pieces of that family have already come to the United States, and others want to use the EB-5 program to reunify the family. All of those are reasons behind the investment, and they vary from person to person and family to family. but the goal behind the investment is the same. It's to get a permanent green card, to use the EB-5 program to get permanent residence for the family to come to the United States and live here permanently. The second goal of the three important goals is to see a return of the investment capital, to preserve and protect that investment capital at some point in the future, to see that money returned to them at some point in the future. That's always the second goal. The third goal would be a return on the investment, or to earn a little something along the way of that investment, if they can get it. But the savvy EB-5 investor will never chase after a higher rate of return on the investment if it means putting an additional risk on the green card or the return of the investor, preserving and protecting that capital investment. So that return on investment, or to earn a little something on the way, is a far distant third goal apart from the other two. Now, I wanted to touch on COVID in around the world, and on projects in general, especially when it comes to EB-5. We get questions like this all the time. So I wanted to be sure to touch on that. The projects that are showing difficulty are those projects that are showing difficulty, whether it's EB-5 or not EB-5. And those are offices, multi-purpose developments that have retail space, or a lot of retail space that we're supposed to pay the bills. There's a big challenge on brick and mortar stores right now. Maybe they can be open during COVID. Maybe they're shut during COVID. There certainly aren't people who are expanding. Not likely to see anyone expand or to add stores at this time and during the COVID pandemic. Others would be anything that's latched to hospitality. That includes hotels and caterers and anything in the hospitality industry. Also, luxury condominiums are struggling during this time period. Vacation destinations, if there's vacation home sales and beach sales are also being challenged, simply because people aren't as mobile, and they can't travel, they can't jump on an airplane and make it to the vacation destination, or on the ship to make it a good holiday. Also, those projects that are poorly funded, if they were just scraping by, or they were highly leveraged, then they've seen an incredible challenge during COVID, especially because the cash flows for businesses, most businesses that have a demand for cash to service the debt, and because they were so poorly funded, they're going to be challenged during the COVID time period. And those that have been highly reliant on a huge or a high percentage of EB-5 dollars, some of the EB-5 projects that we've seen in the marketplace are 40, 50, 60% EB-5. It's a very small portion of it is non-EB-5, and so those have been challenged as well. So those heavily leveraged or highly reliant on EB-5, or those vacation destinations, hospitality, those types of things have seen challenges in EB-5 projects in our current atmosphere, or COVID atmosphere in this economy. But there are some projects that have seen positive aspects and some positive growth. And you wouldn't think about that during a COVID pandemic, when the news around the world is talking about the economy is shrinking and there's high unemployment and employers are closing doors because they can't open, and retailers don't have enough money to pay the bills, to keep the lights on, to cover their fixed expenses. Well, there are some projects and some types and some categories in the economic sector here in the United States that are actually showing growth. And there are some projects out there that have income stability. That's an interesting thought. There are less variable contractual income, for example, long-term tenants who can provide a lower exposure to some of those variables because there's a long-term contract or a long-term lease in place, and it's a good solid company that is the lessor. Then the project is stabilized, and there isn't as much risk when it comes to whether or not there's going to be sufficient cash flow. And there are also some of those industry sectors where the developments are plugged into critical areas of the economy. There are those that are facilities where the tenant and the revenues and the business operations, lower the risk of failure because the tenant and the sector in which the economy that they are plugged into are critical to sustain retail, to sustain distribution in the United States or around the world. So those happen to be data centers. Certainly Zoom, and we're on a Zoom call today. Certainly a lot more use of the internet when we've got kids going to school over the internet. We've got businesses using the internet more critically, and also logistics. Logistics and distribution facilities in key locations have also been some areas that have continued to be strong in a COVID-19 environment. And some of this you can see, there's a link there at the bottom of the screen. If you can copy that link, you can see an entire report that talks just about what it is that is surviving COVID when it comes to investment styles and types. And the reason that I bring that up is because CMB's current projects and our recent projects have been with a development company known as Hillwood Development Company. And our current project is CMB Group 75. And yes, it's in the logistics and distribution sector of the U.S. economy. It has a long-term tenant who has already been identified, and we can share that information with you when we're under a non-disclosure. So if you reach out to us, we'll give you some information to contact our offices and our investor relations managers. We can share who that long-term tenant will be, and that'll give you an idea that this particular sector and this particular project checks all the boxes from that previous page where the Jones Lang LaSalle report shows that it's likely to be a very positive during the COVID pandemic rather than a negative where some of the other employment or other areas of the economy have been impacted negatively. CMB Group 75 is a logistics and warehouse facility under development. It's a build to suit, so the tenant is prescribing what they want and how they want it. And again, so that's been identified, the tenant has already been identified. It's $26.1 million of EB-5 funding. That's up to 29 units to be subscribed in this particular partnership. The location is in Detroit, Michigan region. For many of you from around the world, you're familiar with Detroit and their automobile manufacturing facility. Well, this one is in that Detroit region. It's right on the border between Ontario, Windsor, Canada. And so its location across the northern tier of the United States, as well as its adjacency to the Canadian border, provides a wonderful location for a distribution and logistics facility there in the Detroit region. It also is very close to the Detroit Metropolitan Airport, so the air cargo is also a plus in the consideration of the development of this particular project. The developer is Hillwood Development Company. Hillwood Development Company was founded in 1988 by Ross Perot Jr. Now, the Ross Perot legacy and the Ross Perot family is one that is certainly it's a highlight of industrial and American commerce and American ingenuity. Mr. Perot Sr. was at one time an IBM salesman, and he went on to found Electronic Data Systems, EDS. He moved out of IBM, International Business Machines, into EDS, which was a software company, and that was back in the 1960s. He later sold EDS to General Motors, and for a short time was chairman of General Motors, leaving to found Perot Systems in 1988, which he later sold to Dell in 2009. So he started multiple businesses, he ran multiple businesses, corporates, and then he sold them off. And again, another important part of the history of Ross Perot Sr. in 1992 and 1996, he was a candidate for president of the United States. And although he didn't win the candidacy and he was never elected president of the United States, for the longest period of time, he did change the face of American politics and the direction of American politics by the way that he told the truth and the way he presented facts in his candidacy. The industrial experience across Hillwood is absolutely amazing. From 1988 forward, they've done more than 14.2 million square meters developed. They've got another darn near 48 million square meters that have been acquired, and another additional 13.4 square meters as, I'm sorry, 13, almost 2 million square meters under construction right now. They continue to lead the industry and provide value across 61 industrial markets, 28 states, 6 countries. So it's a global company with a global footprint, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company that is amazing in many ways in what they do and in their portfolio. You'll be able to find out more about Hillwood. We'll show you how to get in touch with CMB. We'll send you some information if you've registered today about CMB and our projects with Hillwood. And so we'll share that with you as a follow-up to our webinar today. The Hillwood track record and with CMB, there have been 31 different partnerships with Hillwood and CMB. That's an amazing number. That means that Hillwood Development Company understands EB-5, they understand the investors in EB-5, and they understand what's important in EB-5. Their goals, and they're a very conservative company, and their goals are to provide value to the EB-5 investor through job creation and by being able to undertake projects that they service the investment and they create a lot of jobs. We've, out of those 31 partnerships with CMB, they've already created or already returned capital to 14 of those partnerships. 25 of those partnerships have been adjudicated by the USCIS with approval, and 5 of the partnerships have gone through the path far enough to see the investors see an I-829. Sufficient jobs have been created for the investors to attain their permanent green card. We have a long-term successful relationship with Hillwood Development Company. Again, they're a very, very conservative company, and they continue to position themselves in the growing industry where the market demand is, and it shows that economy sector of industrial logistics and facilities are continuing to prove to be greater value during COVID than they were prior to COVID, simply because it's critical infrastructure. The idea of brick and mortar has softened, and yet people are shopping from home. People are buying more in e-commerce online. So these industrial logistics and these types of facilities where there's e-commerce tenants, which is the same for the Group 75 with that e-commerce, top 5 e-commerce tenant going in there. It'll be a project that continues to grow in this post-COVID sector. So when we look at just as a quick wrap up before I transition to DIanne and her message, CMB and Hillwood have had a long relationship, successful relationship, not only for CMB and Hillwood, but for the investors who have participated in the projects investing with Hillwood, with CMB, where Hillwood is using that EB-5 capital to create jobs. This particular project will also take advantage of the sector of logistics and warehouse facilities during a COVID environment where the demand is greatest for that type of asset and that type of development. Additionally, CMB continues to be the leader in EB-5. We continue to support our 5,700 investors, and we continue to create a lot of jobs for America, and we continue to help investors reach their goals of permanent residence through the EB-5 program for themselves and their family. And we'd love to help you and your family. If you're looking to do an EB-5 investment, or you're considering EB-5 or coming to the United States and using the EB-5 program, we'd love to be able to begin a dialogue and a discussion to talk about how we can be of help to you and your family achieve your goals. Fair enough? So now I'd like to transition to move to our guest. And DIanne, if I welcome any of you to one day, if you meet DIanne, you'll see she's just a wonderful, warm human being. She's got a lot of knowledge, and she is an amazing resource. So she's going to, at the end of her presentation, I'm going to give this away a little bit. She'll ask you to reach out to her and give you the information on how to contact her. I strongly encourage you to do that. She's an expert in the field. She's helped many, many families come to the United States. She's thought about things and experienced things that many families hadn't even considered. She'll be able to lead you through all of those twisty roads and avoiding mistakes that you don't want to make that'll do nothing but cost you agony and money. And she's just a warm and wonderful and a talented individual. So I encourage you to make contact with DIanne and her team at the conclusion of our event.
Thank you,
DIanne's going to
Clyde.
talk about the big move to America. DIanne, thank you again for being here.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for having me as your special guest at this webinar. Yes, as Kai said, I did the big move to the United States in 2001. I had the responsibility of moving 2 businesses, 2 houses, 2 children, and 1 husband. And so I had a lot on my plate at that point. I had a family home in one city, and then I had a separate home at the beach. And so I had to do a lot of work in order to make this big move possible. As Kai mentioned, I have had a lot of experience in moving families. I've learned an enormous amount through my own move and helped many families make a successful move to the United States in order to start living their wonderful new life and the American dream. So moving on to the next slide, Kai, I'm going to talk briefly about what Pathway does, just momentarily, just so that people understand the enormity and the comprehensiveness of our service. We basically have a very wide variety of services that include opening up a bank account for you in the United States, which you're not able to do, or you were not able to do unless you were here in person. With COVID, that has made it very difficult for our clients to come to the United States to open bank accounts and to purchase property. We are able to provide that service to you. We also assist you with investing in property here. We work very closely with mortgage lenders who are happy to give mortgages to our clients who want to invest in property here. We help you in every aspect of preparing your new life here. Then we also prepare you for when you arrive here. We help you establish a credit score. We explain to you and teach you about taxes. We advise about schools and colleges that your children might have to go to. We help you get your driver's license. We guide you as to where and how to get your social security number. Both those items, the social security number and the driver's license, are 2 very key important aspects of your life here in America, because every time you want to do something, somebody's going to ask you to present one of either of those or both of those. And we help you with developing your network. We can guide you into helping you find a job. We are not recruiters, we are not headhunters, but we will point you in the right direction if you're looking for a job. We also advise our clients that want to purchase businesses or they want to establish a business here. They might have a very successful business outside the United States and they'd now like to introduce it to the United States. So we can assist with your income, your jobs, learning a new language. If English is not your home tongue, we can help you with that too. We assist you with learning the culture in the United States. We urge you to enjoy living in the United States. We give you pointers. We encourage our clients to volunteer in organizations that they feel passionate about. And so there's an overall picture here of people that need our help and that need to learn how to live this new life in the United States. I'm going to mention briefly, we have in fact with CMB prepared a booklet which is called Preparing Your Pathway to America. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you my email address and you can please reach out to me. It is a free booklet. It involves a lot of information that you can use in your preparation, in your arriving and living here. And so we'd be happy to share that document with you, that booklet with you at the end of this presentation. So let's talk about the big move. It's a big subject and I'm going to try and give you as much guidance as I possibly can, but obviously we can't do everything at this time, but I hope I'm going to give you a really broad look at the kind of things that you're going to need to focus on while you prepare yourself for this move. So the very first thing is decisions. You have to make a lot of decisions. And if you're a procrastinator, this is probably going to be stressful because if you don't make decisions, it's not going to end well. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I'm going to say that again. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So very important that you make decisions and you make them quickly, and you make them with information around you that enable you to make those decisions quickly. So the most important thing is, are you going to ship your household goods, your worldly goods, or aren't you? And this is a question that many of our clients ask us. There are a lot of answers to that question, because if you have a family, if you have children and pets and a home, then that's going to demand a certain consideration. If you are a single person, or you are just a couple with no children, and you've been used to living in an apartment, and you have been used to living with not, in a minimalist kind of environment, then maybe not shipping is probably for you. But those are the kind of decisions that you need to make at this point. And you can make this while you're waiting for your EB-5 processing of your initial conditional green card to come. You can start making all of these plans so that you're not scrambling to plan something when your green card becomes approved, and you've now got to start scrambling to get everything sorted out before you have your interview at the consulate. Most important, what are you going to ship and what are you going to leave behind? So many of us collect things that we either haven't used for years, or we don't need anymore, or our children have grown out of, or we just don't need to ship them. Shipping is expensive, and so there really has to be a good reason for you to want to ship your worldly goods and your furniture. Next most important thing is, where are you going to live? Are you going to rent or are you going to buy? We, in fact, advise our clients always to purchase a property here in the United States rather than renting, because renting is much more expensive. And in addition to that, you get the benefit of a tax benefit if you have a mortgage, and you have a place to ship your goods to. You have a home that you can put your family and your wife, or your husband and your children in when you get here. Rent is normally higher than mortgages, and so you benefit in a wide variety of ways if you purchase a property. Another consideration is, what are your needs when you arrive? Where are you going to live? What do you need? And how are you going to get there? Most people arrive at an airport with 2 pieces of luggage or more, maybe 3 pieces of luggage with your personal clothing in it. But that's not going to help you start your new life. You're going to need other things around you in order to begin this new life in the United States. And so moving your family and your personal belongings is a critical piece of coming to the United States. So let's talk about how you prepare for the move. Most important, to be ruthless. You need a clean house, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Make sure that you get rid of everything that you have not used, that you don't want, that you don't like, that's not valuable to you, and that doesn't add value or joy to your life. So you can really get rid of a huge amount of things that you don't need to bring. I was foolish at that time. I bought things that I really didn't need in America, that I really didn't want, and I didn't need to have shipped them. But we live and learn. So be ruthless. Make sure that you get rid of everything that you don't want to ship. Shipping can be expensive. And so leave what you don't want behind. Also, somebody else said to me recently, you never get very much money for secondhand goods anywhere in the world. So rather donate them or give them away, but get rid of them, because you're not going to be able to sell your items and then replace them in the United States for the same amount of money. You're not going to get enough money for them in your home country, and you're certainly not going to have enough money to replace them in the United States if that's what you're intending to do. Things are expensive, and they're also cheaper here. So it just depends on what the item is as to whether you can easily replace it or not. And I'll talk about that more in detail in a moment. So here are some recommendations around deciding. Let's talk about what the upside is of shipping your items and what the downside is of that. So let's move on to the next slide, Kai, if we could. Right, so what are the pros of shipping your personal items? it certainly makes settling into your new home much easier. You're going to be in a very different environment. You're going to be in a new city. You're going to be in a new culture. And to have your own things around you really makes settling in so much easier. It doesn't have to be a full household of goods, but it's certainly, and my clients tell me this all the time, that they are so happy that they shipped their personal effects with them when they came. Makes you feel at home. You're going to be in a strange environment, and with your things around you, you're going to feel more at home. You're also going to have no expense for purchasing basic furniture when you get here. Good furniture is expensive in the United States. You can get cheap secondhand furniture if that's what you want to do, but most of my clients don't want to do that, and they also have irreplaceable family items that they want to keep with them, and they want to hand them down to their children at a later stage of life. So you don't have any need to replace these items when you arrive, which saves you an enormous amount of time. Imagine if you had to go out shopping for couches and sofas and tables and dining room suites and office furniture and all the things that you need to make your life work. You will have lots of small children's items. Children are very attached to their things. They love their bed, they love their teddies, they love their toys. Very important that small children's items are brought with you when you relocate. And most important of all is that every state has differences. So some states will be more expensive than others to replace these items. Other states might be a little cheaper, but you're still going to have to go through the process of shopping for all of those items that you need. So let's talk about the opposite side of the coin. Shipping your items is expensive. So when you're deciding on what to ship, make sure that that item is really important to you to ship. It's going to be either going to be expensive to replace in the United States, or it's going to be, you're going to miss it, or it's something that your mother might have left you, or your father. It might be an important part of your life that you don't want to leave behind. And I've spoken about all the time and energy it takes to shop for these items. You won't believe how much time it takes to replace just one item, for example, a bed or a headboard or tables or chairs. There's a huge amount of choice here in the United States, so people tend to get overwhelmed. There's also a lot of online help, but some items you really want to sit in or lie in or feel or touch. And so online does help, but it's not always the panacea to getting those items into your home and installed. So I hope that gave you some idea of the pros and cons of whether to ship or not. I recommend that my clients do absolutely ship certain items. It might not be a full container worth, but they still have their personal items around them, which certainly makes them feel better. So let's move on to the next slide, which is shipping companies. Very important decision to decide on a shipping company that can ship your items, whether it's just a couple of boxes that you've packed, or whether it's an entire 20-foot or 40-foot container that will go on a ship and come over to the United States to the closest port of where you're going to be living. Do your research on these shipping companies. Go online and join Facebook groups that can tell you, people will share their experiences with certain companies. And there are many very reliable worldwide shipping companies in the United States that our clients work with. And I'm going to mention a few here, but you need to do your own due diligence to find reliable and safe shippers in your country. Very important that the company that you use has a good, reliable agent in the city where you're going to live in the United States. So if you're moving from China or from Vietnam or from South Africa or from England, make sure that the company that you choose has a very close relationship with one of these companies that I'm going to mention now in the United States. Allied, Atlas, United, Seven Seas Worldwide, DB Schenker. These are all really credible, wonderful companies that have been in operation for many decades, and they do a superb installation when your container or your shipping box arrives here in the United States. So very important that you check that you have a good, reliable US agent when your goods arrived here. Another important part of moving a family is moving pets. Often people don't want to leave their pets behind. And people mostly have dogs and cats, but some people even have horses that they want to move. So very important that you know that there is no quarantine to move a pet from one country into the United States. Our experience recommends that they ship separately once you have a place to put them. We don't recommend that you ship your pet on the plane with you. Some people do it, but I don't recommend it at all because I think it's very traumatic for the family, and it's also traumatic for the dog because he can smell you, or the cat knows that you're near, and it's a very foreign environment to them. That being said, they do travel well. They arrive as if nothing has happened when they get delivered to your home, but because there's no quarantine, you can get them really quickly, and it's normally about a 24 to 36 hour procedure from your home country to the time they're delivered at your home. Shipping, there are companies that specialize in shipping animals, and this is very important. You need to not do this yourself. You need to work with professionals that can advise you exactly the size of your dog, the age of your dog. And on that note, do not ship a puppy. Puppies don't travel well. Bring a family dog that you've had for a couple of years, that your children love, that you love, but don't get tempted to bring a puppy. Puppies are available in America. We have gorgeous puppies here. So your children can choose a puppy if you don't have one, but don't ship a puppy. So that's important. There are companies that my clients use, like Jetta Pet and Global Paws, but also you could speak to your veterinarian. They will probably know who the pet shippers are in your country or in your city of origin that are most reliable and that will give you excellent service in that regard. So very important piece about pets. And if you're going to be shipping a horse, then obviously you need to work with highly specialized shippers who ship race horses and show jumping horses all around the world, because that is an expensive exercise. But horses are valuable and they are personal, and so important that you use professionals in that regard. Let's talk about motor vehicles. We do not recommend that you ship a car unless it's a collectible, or it's a very expensive vehicle, and it is a left-hand drive. You'll notice that we put a picture in here of somebody driving on the right-hand side, but this is not a good idea to bring a right-hand drive car to the United States. Many countries around the world drive on the left. In the United States, we drive on the right. And we have drive-throughs everywhere in the United States. And a drive-through is where you don't get out of your vehicle, you drive up to a window and you get the service right there. And I'm sure everybody's heard about the McDonald's drive-through and all the fast food drive-throughs. We also have pharmacy drive-throughs where you can get your medications through a window. You can have many banks have drive-throughs. So if you are sitting on the wrong side of the car, in your car, you're going to have real difficulty doing the drive-throughs in the United States. And also, there are many problems with foreign vehicles coming into the United States that have not been approved by our very stringent motor vehicle standards. Some vehicles, in fact, are not sold in the United States because they are not up to our standards of safety. So very important that you work with your shipper and determine whether your car is worth shipping or not. And 99% of the time, it is not worth shipping. In fact, my husband had a Corvette in South Africa, and it was a left-hand drive, so it was perfect for America, but it had major issues with its engine. It was virtually a race car. He would have to have found a petroleum station or a gas station that had unleaded fuel, which we don't have anymore. We have, rather, he would have had to find leaded fuel, and we have unleaded fuel here. So it would have been a major issue for him. So if you want to ship something like that, talk to us and we'll be able to advise you in that regard. You can ship, people have shipped small boats, pleasure boats that we use on many of our lakes and waterways and our oceans here in America. So if it fits into a 20-foot or a 40-foot container, you can generally bring a boat. But again, these are all available in the United States, and it's probably much cheaper to buy one here than to ship a used one. Let's talk about electric appliances and computers. Most people don't know that almost all homes in the United States, whether they are your own property or a rental property, come with a refrigerator, a washer and dryer, an oven, a cooktop, a dishwasher, a microwave, a disposal in the sink, and an HVAC system. An HVAC system is a complete air conditioning unit, heating and cooling unit for the entire space, for the entire house or the entire apartment. So those things you do not need to bring. And in addition to that, those items are reasonably inexpensive in America. So it depends on what kind of fridge or washer or dryer you want to buy, but these are generally inexpensive items. And if they come pre-installed in the place where you're going to live, there is absolutely no reason to bring them. What it doesn't include are your small appliances. And we put a picture up here of small appliances. And these are things like irons and toasters and blenders, coffee machines, etc. But there is an exception here. I have had a couple of clients who've had very expensive Italian espresso machines that are virtually that are professional machines, and they're very expensive, and so they have brought them over. The most important thing about those is that you are probably going to have to get a step up or step down transformer, because we have our US power is 110 to 120, and many countries in the world are 220. So these kinds of things have to be plugged into a transformer that can step that power down to the 110 that we use here in the United States. But there are issues with that as well, because if you bring a transformer to change the power input, the item itself that's not designed to get a lower power into it tends to break. So we do not recommend that you bring small kitchen appliances at all. Leave those items behind. They're very inexpensive here, and you can replace them very easily with brand new items that you can return to the store if there's something wrong with them. You can't return your item that you bought in your foreign country, but you can return something here in the United States if you don't like it, you don't want it, it doesn't work to your satisfaction, or there's something wrong with it. We have an incredible return policy in the United States that really is valuable. If you buy something that you shouldn't have, you can easily take it back and get a refund and buy something else. I want to talk briefly about garden and lawn tools, mowers, that kind of thing. I would leave that all behind. If you have specific garden tools that are not electric that you want to bring, you have a favorite shovel, or you have a spade that was given to you that's important to you, but I would generally leave garden tools and lawn tools behind. Now, if you have woodworking tools that you can bring that are not electric, I would bring those if those are important to you and they have a particular use for you. I would bring those. But we have two amazing home stores here called Lowe's and Home Depot, and you can get just about everything and anything at Lowe's or Home Depot that you could not even dream of. So think about those things before you decide to ship those. Let's talk about TV. Most TV sets don't travel well. They're fragile, they can break. I don't know whether any of you have seen what happens to a container when it gets loaded onto a ship, but there's lots of banging and smashing and moving, and so it's probably not ideal to bring a TV set because they sometimes don't travel well, especially if it's an LED. And TV sets are actually very inexpensive in the United States, and you can get the latest model when you arrive here, rather than bringing an old TV set that you could probably give away or donate to somebody in your hometown. And also bear in mind that different countries have different systems. For example, the US has NTSC broadcast system, and many countries around the world, especially Europe, South Africa, Australia, have what's called PAL. So you don't want to bring a TV set that's not going to be able to receive a broadcast signal in the United States. So think about all those things before you start shipping those items. Let's talk about special items, heirlooms and treasures that you definitely don't want to leave behind. And these include things like wine collections. Very important to remember that every state in the United States may have different rules around alcohol. So if you want to ship a wine collection or a Scotch collection, you need to make sure that the state that you're going to live in allows you to do that. Most states in the union do allow that, but just make sure with your shipper that if they happen to open your container and check it and make sure that you're not importing illegal goods, that you're allowed to bring that into that particular state. Pianos, I ship my piano from South Africa. It will need to be crated very, very carefully. They generally take the legs off, they dismantle it as much as possible, and it'll obviously need to be tuned when it gets here. Other musical instruments can be brought in, any symphonic instruments, violins, tubas, anything else that you might want to bring that your children or that you play is very easily shipped. Fragile items like mirrors, paintings, crystal glass, glassware, collectible items like that need to be very well packed. And if you work with a very good shipping company, they have amazing packaging materials that can protect those items. I worked with Allied, and they were an amazing packer. They packed everything perfectly. I did not have a single thing break or shatter when they unpacked it. Valuable items like antiques, antique furniture, Persian rugs are very important that you bring those, or that you want to bring those, and those travel, of course, very easily, and they ship very easily. Let's talk briefly about jewelry, valuable jewelry, watches, diamonds, any jewelry that you might want to bring. Never ship jewelry. Always carry it in yourself when you arrive in the United States. If they ask you, you can say yes, and you can declare it. You can say, I'm an immigrant, I'm coming here to immigrate, and this is my jewelry collection, and you can show it to them, and they will wave you by. There's no customs payable on it. It's your own. If it's your own personal jewelry, there's absolutely no problem with it. So most important is that you keep it on your person when you're traveling in the plane, and when you arrive here, you can just declare it. If they ask you, it's not even necessary to declare it as part of your personal belongings. But if they do ask you if you've got a very valuable jewelry collection, you can tell them that this is my jewelry, and you can probably present the valuation certificates if you've got them for insurance purposes when you get here. So that's important that you bring those with you as well. Right, how to ship. Very important that you get at least 3 to 4 companies quoting you on a shipping exercise. You're going to do a lot of paperwork. You're going to make lists of everything. You're going to become an expert at drawing up lists, because you have to know what you're shipping, what the value is of your items, and do you have insurance to cover those items at their value to replace them. Unfortunately, over many decades, some people have lost a container overboard. This is very rare today. People don't lose containers regularly unless something catastrophic happens to the ship, but very important that you have insurance to cover everything that's in that container. You may need to obtain permission to import certain items. For example, if they are covered by the CITES, International CITES, which is CITES, and that governs things like animal hides, stuffed animals, taxidermy of animal heads with horns. Those need to be cleared first. They need to be fumigated. They need to be absolutely sure that you're not importing a whole lot of bugs that we don't want here in the United States. And you need to make sure that every item that you ship has been thoroughly cleaned, that there is no soil or dirt or gravel or anything on the items that you ship. You need to find out how long the shipping container voyage is going to be. How long can you expect? Most of them, depending on where you come from, but most of them range from 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what port they're being shipped to. And you need to find out what size container you want, because that's also a decision to make once you have decided how much stuff you want to ship, whether you're going to go for a 20-foot, whether you're going to go for a 40-foot, or whether you're going to go for a 40-foot high top container, which is even taller than the normal 40-foot. Or are you just going to get a tiny little container to take a couple of boxes of your personal effects? So all of those options need to be considered. And also you need to know where the closest port of your new place of residence is. There are a lot of ports, active ports around the United States. And so you need to know exactly where your container will be arriving at and who will be fetching it. Your container will probably be inspected by customs. They x-ray these containers, so you are not allowed to bring anything explosive. You're not allowed to bring any firearms. You have to be very careful about what is prohibited, and you need to take the guidance from your shipping agent in that regard. So now you've established how you're going to ship, where it's going to ship to. Now you're waiting for the shippers to arrive at your home for the move out day. Very important that you are ready for the shippers, that you have done all your purging, that you've got rid of everything so there's no confusion about what is going to be shipped and what is going to be left behind. So my advice to you is to be very clear about where the items are to be shipped are located in your home and where those items that are not going to be shipped are put. You don't want to start having packers starting to pack up things that you've actually promised to your best friend, and now it's all packed up and it's gone down to the shipping yard and it's just too late. So be very organized about what gets shipped and what gets left behind. And again, your lists are very, very important. Make sure that you have a list of everything that is going to be packed. The shipper will send in a team of packers to your home, and you need to have a lot of eyes on that team of packers, depending on what country you're coming from. We've heard items that suddenly go missing and don't arrive at your new home in the United States because somebody quite liked the look of it and helped themselves to it. So very important that you have people that are around your house while they are packing it up to make sure that things aren't slipping out the back door. Very important. So watch carefully how everything is packed and inventory every item into every box and number every box if you can. And then keep a list that correlates with the number that's on that box and what's in that box. So that once everything is shipped, you can then organize which number box is going to go into which room in your new American home, because that can save you a huge amount of effort and unpacking and aggravation. If you know exactly what number and label which room on the box to which room it's going to be delivered. Right. Once you've left your home, we recommend that you send your pets to a kennel facility, and you will only call for them when you are settled in the US and ready for them. So what normally happens is that you'll get on a plane, you'll have your personal things with you, you'll either stay in a hotel for a couple of days, you then might transition into an Airbnb or a temporary home while you wait for your own home to be ready for you to move in. It's very seldom that you get the opportunity where you can move literally straight from arriving in the United States straight into your home that you've purchased. Sometimes that works out, but sometimes it doesn't, because you may want to do things like repaint, redo floors, and prepare it for when your shipping container arrives. So there may be a couple of weeks in between the time that you leave your country and the time that you arrive in the US until you actually welcome your container to where the final destination is going to be. So the same with pets. Put your pets into a kennel when you leave the country, and then keep them there until you're ready to receive them at the place where they're going to live. You don't want to be moving your pets around from one place to the next until it's very distracting. It's very disconcerting for them and your family, and very disruptive. So only call for your pets when you know that you are settled in your home, and also obviously know when your container is going to arrive. So be ready for it. Make sure that the final destination is clean and ready for delivery. Make sure that all the renovations have been done, the painting, the floors, the cleaning, all of that stuff needs to be done before your container arrives. So let's talk about step 3, move-in day at your new home in the United States. Very exciting day, stressful for everybody because it's going to happen quickly. Most of these big professional shippers do it fast. They do it within a day. And make sure that when your container arrives that you have the key to open it. Make sure the correct key to unlock the container. We've even had people who've got their container and been given the incorrect key, and now we have to try and find an opener to open up this ginormous lock that's on a container to protect it. So make sure that you have the right key, and make sure that there's enough space for it to be unloaded closest to your home. And if necessary, make arrangements so that you don't block up the access. When my container arrived at my home, I live on a small cul-de-sac in my neighborhood, and so the truck that brings the container is huge, and so it took up most of the street. It wasn't a problem because I had already told my neighbors that this was going to be happening, and so we didn't block up the street. but make sure that you have a detailed plan of where they're going to unload and how it's going to come into your home. Very important to draw up a detailed plan or where everything is going to go. You can always get diagrams and maps and layouts of the home that you've either purchased or the apartment that you're going to live in. Do a little diagram and decide where, in fact, you're going to place your items that you're shipping so that you don't have to then rearrange the whole house after the moving crew have left. Use them to put your furniture in the place where you want it, and it'll save you an enormous amount of energy and time after they've gone. Be kind to your workmen. It's tough work, it's heavy work. They've got to carry heavy things, and it's a difficult job. So order some pizza for them at lunchtime. Give them a short break. Give them some Cokes and some soft drinks. And then, very important, if they've done a good job, in America we tip our movers. So give them a tip at the end, because most of them are temporary workers. The shipping companies hire them on a daily basis to do these shipping jobs for them. So give them a good tip at the end if they've done a good job and they've moved you into your new house. They'll thank you for it. Right, so now it's been unpacked, and they will unpack every box for you. And as they unpack them, make sure that there aren't any damages or items missing, because you've got your list of what should have been in that box. So you should have a pretty good idea of if there have been any damages or missing. And then immediately report these to the shipping company and the insurance company as soon as possible. They will pay out your claim, no problem, as long as you've had a value attached to it. They are happy to replace it or to reimburse you for the loss. Now you can schedule the delivery of your pets. It'll take about 24 to 48 hours to get them from your home country to your door, and they will deliver your dog or your cat or whatever to your house or to the place that they're going to be housed. So you'll be ready for them and you'll be excited to receive them. Introduce yourself to your neighbors. Make sure that you know who they are, that they know who you are. They're going to be curious about who you are and where you've come from. So go out and introduce yourself to your neighbors. And it's also a safety thing. If anything happens in your home and you need somebody to help you urgently, they'll be there for you. And so it's very important in America that you know your neighbors. And then, of course, now you are able to settle in and enjoy your new home with your family. And hopefully all of these tips will make that an easier road than many people have walked. So once again, I want to remind you that we've prepared a booklet of many of these items, and we're happy to email it to you. It's a virtual booklet, and it'll give you a lot of tips and a lot of information about how to do this move successfully. So contact me at PathwayUSA. You can either WhatsApp me or call me on my number on the screen. You can email me at pathwayusa.co.za, or you can visit our website and you can look for our services, and there will be there for you to find out all about what Pathway can do to make your move happy and successful. Thank you, Kai.
Thank you, DIanne. Always, I'm always amazed at how much your experience and it connects with those around the world, simply because you've already done it and you've done it for so many families. And it's really a need that families haven't thought about. I'm just going to move to America. Well, and that needs to be planned out a little bit, and you give us a lot of insight. So thank you very much for sharing that insight and sharing that with us today. I want to remind those that have joined us this morning, if you do have a question, please use the Q&A. I see that there have been a few questions that have come in and from around, and Andrew will lead us on those. But sure, we love to have questions where we're going to stick with it until the questions are answered, as many as we can. And Andrew, would you like to begin us with the first handful of questions that have come in?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've certainly had a pretty active Q&A while presentations are going on, so that's wonderful. So I'll do my best to try to keep in the interest of time here to move these forward. So DIanne, there was a question that came in here, and this one's for you. At what point should I begin planning the things that we would discuss today during your presentation? How far before?
Right. Well, the sooner the better, actually. And I would say that you should do it no less than 12 months before you're expecting to arrive in the United States. So I would say that it takes time to purge a home. It takes time to sort out what you're taking and what you're not taking. You need to simplify your life a lot before you can do this move. So, the sooner the better. But I would say definitely not less than a year before you expect to arrive physically in the United States.
Thank you very much, DIanne. Kai, after landing in the U.S., we have a 2-year residency period. This is a question about a family petition. Is it possible for just one of our family to take residency, or do all three must be present at the same time once you enter the U.S.?
That's really a question for your immigration attorney. But here's what I can share with you. I do know that families are families, and there are needs to spend time in the United States. There may be some needs for part of the family to remain in the homeland. It may be because of business needs or an infirmed parent, or it could be something along with the children finishing a school term. So there may be reasons for that, but your specific case and your particular fact pattern and your set of facts, you should discuss that with your immigration attorney and get their guidance on how to manage that, so that you are in compliance with whatever the requirements are, and you've got your attorney to guide you with the legal advice that you'll need to be successful.
Thank you very much, Kai. DIanne, if we have a lot of jewelry and gold, do we have to declare and carry bills for the same?
You can carry it into the United States, no problem. It probably would be a good idea to have valuations of what the value is of it, but there is no restriction. And if they ask for you at the airport, you can tell them, they'll say, are you carrying anything valued more than $10,000? You can then say yes, and you can show them what you're bringing in, whether it's watches, jewelry, gold, etc. I would declare it at that point. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have another one here for you. Do you know if we were able to take firearms with us?
No, I don't think so. As a green card holder, you are allowed to have a licensed firearm in the United States, but I do not believe that you are allowed to bring a firearm into the United States from outside. So that would be something that you would check with your attorney, with your immigration attorney should know that, and with your shipping company. But as far as I know, the answer is no.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Unless I just want to add something, unless it's done as a separate shipping, unless it's an import, a special import where it comes separately and you are moving it as your personal collection. And I think that CMB might be able to help with that question as well, because I know that you have knowledge of that. So that could be a question that you could direct at CMB as well.
So Kai, we've got a couple questions here. How has or what have been the impacts of COVID for processing times over the last year for the USCIS?
Kai, again, I think that is a question for your immigration attorney, but maybe you can speak to it, Kai.
I can touch on that from our experience. The overall processing, again, you could refer to the USCIS website to get an idea of just what they are showing as their average times. But I'll give you an experience from CMB's side. We continued to have I-526 petitions and an I-829. In fact, in 2020, we had more than 200 of our investors receive permanent green card approvals in our various projects at the I-829 stage, the I-829 petitions approved. So we know that they are processing petitions. The difficulty was not in the USCIS here in the United States in processing the petitions on file. It was the challenge of issuing visas at the consulates around the world. The consulates around the world, because of COVID, were shuttered for anything that was normal business. So the issue with that includes the issuance of visas and that type of thing. So EB-5 in the immigration visa side of things fell victim to that. but simply because the local consulates or the consulate posts around the world weren't open and weren't available to do the regular business of issuing the visas to those that qualified for them. So, answer to your question, there's two parts to that. The USCIS continued to process I-526 and I-29 petitions. CMB, we've seen a lot of approvals at both stages, including more than 200 I-29 approvals in 2020. But the consulate posts outside of the United States, the ones that actually issued the visas, whether that be a non-immigrant visa, a tourist visa, business visa, or in our case, the EB-5 visa, they just weren't being issued because the posts weren't open.
Thank you, Kai. There's another question about I-526s. I know these are typically attorney related, but as a general question, would I potentially be eligible for work once I've obtained my I-526 and I'm in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's a question for an attorney, and it would vary on whether or not you're here in the United States and you've done a change of status, or whether you're outside the United States. Those are questions specifically directed to an attorney. Now I'm going to take it to the next stage. Assuming that you've arrived at the United States with an I-526 petition approval, and you have the visa to enter with permission to enter the United States with immigrant intent. Once that you've been issued that conditional green card, you will have the same rights and privileges as every American citizen, with the exception of the ability to vote. So once that you've got the green card, then you're able to work anywhere you want to work, live anywhere you want to live. If you want to work for, or start your own business, I guess is where I was headed with that. With that conditional green card, after the I-526 petition's been approved and you've arrived at the United States, you can work anywhere. And so that's the stage at which work is available. Your question happens to be with the I-526 petition approval. And again, your particular case should be discussed with your attorney to give you specifics of where you're at in that process. The I-526 petition approval doesn't provide any immigration benefit or job-related benefit. Get with your attorney to get a direct answer to what your situation would be.
Thank you, Kai. Sorry, we've just had a few questions about that, so I figured we could address it as a general, and I appreciate your answer. Could you share the latest updates on the impacts from Trump's executive order for Hong Kong?
Well, what I do know is that President-elect Biden has signed 17 presidential proclamations, including some with regard to the no travel ban. And I haven't seen anything come through on Hong Kong yet. We haven't seen a status with that changes the normalization of the relations between China and Hong Kong. I haven't seen that yet. So that may be forthcoming, don't know. What I do know is the Charlie Oppenheim, the State Department's person that writes the visa bulletin, the monthly visa bulletin for the State Department, indicated that Hong Kong was being treated as though it were a separate sovereign country and not part of China when it came to immigration-based visas. That information, we shared that on our news feed. And as more information comes about, you'll be able to, if you go to CMB's website and subscribe to our newsletter, anytime that we post a news feed article that would happen to be with, whether it be President Biden's presidential orders or proclamations, or removing anything that Trump has done with regard to any country or any presidential proclamation that's already out there, we'll post a news article about it, and you'll be able to get that contact or that information on that news article right away. So answer the question directly is I haven't seen anything from President Biden yet on Hong Kong. Charlie Oppenheim from the State Department said that Hong Kong, as far as immigration visas, are still being dealt with as though it's an independent nation. But to stay in touch, go to our website and sign up for a newsletter, and then we'll continue to generate that information, and you'll have it as soon as we have it and get it posted.
Thank you, Kai. DIanne, What about shipping gym equipment, treadwills, weights, etc.? Are those things that I should be considering taking with or getting rid of?
Yes, if they are top end, really good, weights and items, yes. We shipped exercise bikes, weights when we shipped in our container. So yes, the answer would be yes.
And then another follow-up question for you, DIanne. What's the benefit to having a bank account prior to my arrival? And is it possible to have a credit card together with a bank account?
Two answers to that question. It is extremely important that you have a bank account before you get to the United States. First of all, you can move funds into that account, and you can have immediate access to it when you're here. Because once you're here, it's going to be difficult to open up a bank account unless you've got your social security number. As a foreign national, we are able to open up a bank account for you without you being here. Very important, if you want to invest in a property, you need to have a bank account with money in it for a number of months before you are able to use those funds to purchase a property. So another important aspect of wanting to purchase a property here in the United States. It also very importantly aids your credit score. Without a credit score in the United States, you are at a huge disadvantage. And so we can teach you how to build that credit score. Most important, you're not going to get a credit card in the United States because you have no credit score. So that's why it's a chicken and egg situation. You've got to have the bank account in order to get the credit score going, and you need to have specific credit. For example, a mortgage, while you buy a property, while you wait outside the United States, that you then pay for out of this bank account that we've opened for you. You're not going to get a credit card. You will get a debit card from this account that we open for you, and you will get a checkbook. We write checks in the United States for certain things, especially property. In many states, they require you to write a check for certain transactions. So the answer is yes, we can open a bank account. Very important that you get a bank account as soon as possible. And secondly, no, you're not going to get a credit card because you don't have a credit score. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much, DIanne. Let's see here.
Andrew, while you're still looking at that list, DIanne, do you have that? Can you pull up? You mentioned some various companies that provide shipping service. I think that bears a quick review, simply because I'm thinking, and when I was talking about our webinar with some family members, we have some families next to us. We were out shoveling snow the other day, and I told him about our webinar, and he mentioned about the question was where to start. And we're talking about that. And so you had a list of different companies that provide their professional movers around the world. That's probably a good place to start. And I think you highlighted that. What were those companies' names?
Allied, Atlas, United, Seven Seas Worldwide, and DB Schenker. Those are kind of, that's a small example of some of the biggest and largest and most reputable companies in the United States and the world, and they operate around the world, shipping containers specifically for personal people, in other words, families that want to relocate. I'm differentiating them from the big shippers that ship goods around the world. These are people that specialize in moving household items and can unpack and pack your goods in your home country and then unpack them for you here. And so it's important that you understand the distinction. You want to use a professional that is experienced in shipping personal items and furniture and those kinds of things, rather than using just any old person who's got a shipping container and you just go and put all your stuff in it and expect it to get here intact. That'll be a disaster.
Great, thank you.
We've got a couple more. Yeah, thank you, Kai. We got a couple more questions here, and then we'll probably wrap up. DIanne, we got a couple of follow-up questions about the bank accounts. Can I open a bank account from overseas with your support? That would be one, and there's a similar kind of follow-up question to that as well.
Yes, we are doing them for people that are looking to move to the United States, that want to start moving capital into the United States. And yes, we can do it entirely online. we need a number of documents from you in order to verify that you are who you are, and that you have a residential address, etc. So there is some paperwork that goes into it, but everything is online, and we have been opening these very successfully for the past 6 or 8 months since COVID started, because we realized that our clients really did need to have these bank accounts. Very important that they have them. And so we found a bank in New York that is able to do this for our clients very successfully.
Here's DIanne's contact information. It's on the screen, and we've shown it. Make sure that if you write that down or take a picture with your phone, that'll be a great way to get hold of DIanne to ask for her services, and to get with her on what information she can provide in those services to help you out. One more, Andrew? We have time for one more?
Yeah, we do. DIanne, if I bring high-value art, heirlooms that are valuable, antiques, etc., and ship it as part of my personal belongings to the U.S., is that taxed, and are there customs duties to be paid at the port?
Yes, there are some duties to be paid at the port, but that would be included in your shipping quote. So that is just if they are your personal items, I do not believe that they are taxable. They are household goods, but that is something that you would speak to the shipping company about. I did not have to pay any taxes on items that I had bought in a foreign country and brought to the United States. So I think that applies to most of the country, but double check that with your shipper. They'll be able to tell you exactly what duties are payable. And I think it's really a port duty that you paid. And as long as the inventory and I'm trying to think of the word. I think it might be something like a weighbill, but it's got a different name for a shipping container. And it's very detailed as to what's in that container. The inspector at the port that it arrives in will take a look at it. He might open it and inspect it briefly. They may x-ray it, but as long as it's got what you said you put in it, there should be absolutely no problem, and no extra taxes to be paid on importing those items. There may be import duties on a vehicle, on a car. I'm not absolutely sure about that, having not brought a vehicle over here and don't really recommend it, but there may be duties payable on large items like that, boats, cars, that kind of thing.
Probably wise for them to reach out to some qualified international tax consultants too.
Correct.
Well, I think that's going to conclude our Q&A for the day. On the interest of time, we are at the end of our event. Kai, did you have some last words before we wrap up?
I do, and always a thank you goes to DIanne for sharing your time and expertise today. And I also want to thank the participants who joined us today, and those that registered, maybe they couldn't join us. We will post the video, the recorded video of this webinar on our YouTube channel. There will be a follow-up email that goes out to everyone that registered. It'll have a link to our YouTube channel that has the video, so that you'll be able to review, and you'll be able to review any of the questions or any of the information that was shared with you today. And that'll be available with you, and I would anticipate in the next 24 to 48 hours, as soon as we get the recording posted and send out the message. It'll also have information on how to get hold of DIanne. It'll have information on the materials and information that we shared today, and how to download that information so that you can have it. It'll be an electronic version that you can have it. So, and then DIanne, again, thank you.
Well, I noticed that we do have quite a few questions that we did not manage to get to today. So if anybody is on this call, on the Zoom, and they would like those questions answered, I'd be very happy to answer them. There are some questions about bank accounts and buying houses, and various shipping questions. If we didn't get to your question today, please shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to try and answer it for you. Otherwise, I would refer you to people that can have the expertise to do that. And as Kai mentioned, we have prepared a booklet entitled Preparing Your Pathway to America. I'll be very happy to share that with you. Also, reach out to us via email, and we will be very happy to share that booklet with you, with a lot of important ideas and planning suggestions for your big move. Thank you so much again, Kai.
Thank you. And then just for those that have been with us this morning, our participants, we have another Coming to America series webinar. It's scheduled for early March. So be sure to watch your email and your information on that. And that information and that invitation will be coming out. It'll be next in the series of our Coming to America series. So that's coming your way. So again, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you, DIanne. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Andrew, for sharing your Master of Ceremonies talents with us this morning. And we bid you all adieu and have a very good and safe day. Thank you.
Goodbye.